I'm sorry, but
Satan!
can't take your call right now. Please leave a message after the tone.
Wait, who the hell's Satan? For the purposes of this video, we're looking at Satan as a concept, like we would if we were looking at Zeus or Thor or Anubis. No special treatment. For those not of us up to speed with his story, let's check out this completely real 1950s B-movie horror. Roll the tape. Satan, a divine angel created by an almighty God. Overcome by jealousy, drunk on power, Satan goes to war against God and loses. Banished to hell and seeking revenge, the fallen angel now pursues the souls of mankind. Will you give in to sin? The devil, coming this fall. Evil hasn't always existed like we think of it today. In the olden days, by which I mean 3000 BCE, it was chaos and order that were the polar adversaries to which gods staked their claim. That is, until Zoroastrianism in what is modern day Iran came along. The combating gods in this religion were Ahura Mazda, who was born out of light, and Angra Mainyu, born from the darkness. Ahura Mazda created the world, but Angra Mainyu's darkness had penetrated it, causing famine and disease. But it's told a time will come when Ahura Mazda will defeat Angra Mainyu and the humans allied with him, and the good will live in a blessed house. Is this beginning to ring any bells? This shift from order versus chaos to a moral dualism between cosmic good and evil was new, and seems to have had an impact on an ideology academic Philip Harland calls Judean apocalypticism. This worldview was prevalent around the time of Jesus in Judea, and it went something like this.
We are living in an evil age, dominated by evil powers. At the head of those evil powers is evil personified himself, whatever name is given to him. God has a plan to end this current evil age and set up God's age. When God intervenes, it will be a cataclysmic intervention to wipe out evil. Humanity is divided into two camps. There's the righteous and the wicked.
The thing to get your head around is that for holders of this worldview, the apocalypse was a good thing that couldn't come soon enough. So by the time the Gospels roll around, Satan is born as basically evil personified to fulfill his role in this worldview as the apocalyptic adversary of God. At this point, the devil is no more than this definition and hasn't got a personality or even a backstory to speak of. But even a nebulous cardboard cutout of evil has its uses. Meet John. John is unhappy. 20 years ago, the Roman army swept into his home in Jerusalem, destroyed the temple, and slaughtered thousands of other Judeans. John also hears a rumour that the Emperor Nero blamed Christians for a fire that swept through Rome and as a result executed some publicly. John also knows that the Emperor, though recently deceased, is worshipped throughout the land and believed capable of returning from the dead. John is a Christian, and he is not at all happy about the Roman Empire. So, what does John do? He writes the Book of Revelation! This prophetic and apocalyptic collection of recorded visions is the knockout finale to the Bible. It's also an example of the figure of Satan used as a rhetorical device. Among the scenes of hellfire and brimstone, the devil raises his head. Or should that be several heads? Because he's a massive crazy dragon. The picture John is painting falls into the apocalyptic worldview of the world as an evil place. But instead of it just being generically bad, he specifically aligns this evil with the Roman Empire. The devil dragon is accompanied by a giant sea beast, a thinly veiled Emperor Nero, and the whore of Babylon. Babylon, being the previous destroyers of the Temple of Jerusalem, is really Rome. This is a literal demonization of the Roman Empire. The devil as a rhetorical weapon, though, wasn't just reserved for the external enemies of Christianity. From the competing traditions of early Christianity, to the Spanish Inquisition, to the Protestant Reformation, Satan has always came in handy for denouncing the enemy within. A quick word on the Bible. You may be surprised to hear that the Old Testament doesn't have a Satan character at all. Full stop. The snake in the Garden of Eden? Just a snake. I mean, think about it. God does loads of terrible and mad things in the Old Testament. Floods, killing firstborns, pillars of salt. Why would you need the devil to do evil things when God is so freaking terrifying? Satan is used a handful of times in the Old Testament, but just as a word, not a name. In Hebrew, the word means opposer or adversary. Humans, angels, when acting in an adversarial manner, are all described as a Satan. But then, as apocalypticism and the notion of a personified evil gained in popularity, writers started to go back and reinterpret the earlier writings of the Old Testament. They basically wrote fanfiction and retconned Satan in there like nobody's business. Boom! Satan is friends with the snake in the Garden of Eden. Boom! Now he is the snake! At no point during these myriad writings do we hear of a Satan with cloven hoof or pitchfork though. So where does Satan get his devilish looks from? Well, it was a bit of a team effort. Painters and sculptors in the Middle Ages depicted Satan in a variety of forms, but also having a stab at making the devil flesh where the mystery plays. These low-budget performances by village locals enacted scenes from the Bible, and if you wanted to entertain and frighten the crowds in equal measure, you need to make sure you had a villain that was equal parts convincing and horrifying. So their costume makers got creative and cast around for ideas of what a dramatic Satan could look like. Oh yeah, how about wings? No, bat wings, with holes in them. Now, goat legs. Goat beard, goatee, just make him goatee in general. Now, how about a pitchfork to prod people with? So we've drawn up a good villain, shall we see him in action? This is a quick story you probably haven't heard about Satan, and it comes from the 4th century Gospel of Nicodemus. It's just after Jesus' crucifixion. Jesus is bound in the underworld, and so Satan pays a visit to have a chat with Hades, a personification of the grave. Satan tries to convince Hades to keep Jesus trapped in the world of death, as he is their common enemy. But Hades is a little reticent. He says he remembers this guy called Lazarus who escaped recently with Jesus' power, and he doesn't want any trouble from the man himself. Jesus then predictably breaks free and unchains the dead, but on his way out he talks Hades into chaining Satan in his place. I really like this story because we have all these scary cultural figures. You can start to imagine what a dinner party between Satan and Hades and the Angel of Death and the Antichrist and the Grim Reaper might start to look like. In that story we had him in the underworld, a sort of place where dead humans go. But it doubles up and function as a prison for him. It's only later that this develops into a place of punishment, and Satan himself partakes in the punishing. As for inflicting torment on humans still alive and above ground, the devil needs a bit of help. Want untold riches? Or godlike guitar skills? Or even dominion over the world? Well, all this can be yours for the low, low price of one immortal soul. Make a deal with the devil today, and we'll even throw in this luxury pen that only writes in your own blood. Ooh. What could possibly go wrong? It turns out a lot. The idea of making a pact with the devil goes back to a 6th century tale of the cleric Theophilus of Adana, who bizarrely asks Satan to get him a good position in the church. Presumably this request is symptomatic of why he had yet to be given a position. Luckily, he prays to the Virgin Mary when he realises his blunder and she saves him. A pleasure-loving woman in a 13th century German account wasn't as lucky though. After calling on the devil for a good time, he promptly appears and snaps her neck. It's a bit blunt for a moral fable, but take what you can get. Then there were witches known for their deals with the devil, which predominantly occurred in the 14 and 1500s. In contrast to the bleak powerlessness that gave rise to Judean apocalypticism, the church now had dominion over Europe, and many a God-fearing person dedicated themselves to Christianity. But that didn't stop bad things happening. Bad things like your cattle getting ill, or your crops failing, or your child dying, and you know, the plague. Witches offered a convenient scapegoat for this problem of suffering of good people, and so Satan graduated from being merely a rhetorical weapon to an actual weapon that involved burning at the stake and drowning. Robin Briggs, in his book, quotes from numerous contemporary critics of witch hunting who had picked up on the stereotyping of unkempt old women who were deemed a bit obnoxious by their neighbours. The stories these accused women told often had a common theme. They would have a mark that the devil left on them, normally after a sexual encounter. For this they would be rewarded with a stick or powder that could curse or heal anything it touched, explaining your sick child or dead cattle and that witch's prosperity. While the craze for witch hunting withered away, pacts remained strong in literature, with the 6th century Thewlis morphing into Christopher Marlowe's Faust, and then into Futurama's Fry. But let's try and bring this full circle back to the Satan we had at the beginning of the video. If that film were to have a screenwriter, and that script were to be an epic poem, and that was written in the 17th century, then it would be Paradise Lost by John Milton. Paradise Lost functions as a sort of Christopher Nolan reboot of Satan. The blockbuster poem treated the devil with intelligence, gave him a convincing backstory, and was faithful to the source material, while adding something a little extra. It even came with an unimaginatively titled sequel, Paradise Regained. This story is the culmination of Satan's journey into personhood, and is really how we think of him still today. A charismatic figure who staged a revolution in heaven and lost, and now is confined to live his life in hell. In the poem, the devil reasons that the mind is its own place, and in itself could make a heaven of hell, a hell of heaven. And so he comes to his personal conclusion that it is better to reign in hell than serve in heaven. He cuts a somewhat sympathetic character, and this element has been amplified over the years. No longer is he an abstract personification of evil, but there is a rationality and a humanness to his desires and motivations. Sadly, this came a bit too late for Satan, as historian Jeffrey Burton Russell notes. He reached the height of his power just at the time the intellectual structure supporting him began to crumble. Hot on the heels of Milton, a modern era of enlightenment followed, and with it, a skepticism of the very reality of the devil. Gone was the stalking figure of the Middle Ages, summoned to do murderous deeds and grant terrible desires. Science and knowledge relegated him to the position of mythical bogeyman, and your average Joe just stopped taking him seriously. So Satan went on to take his refuge in little nooks and crannies. The Church of Satan was established in 1966. The rise of rock and roll and metal led to a hysteria for playing records backwards. And the horror genre of cinema became his home away from home. So who the hell is Satan? Well, for a while back there, he was a pretty terrifying, formless evil. But our human infatuation with evil was Satan's own undoing, as we got carried away collectively writing more about it, defining a character and its limits. Satan becomes just another story that we have the choice of believing in or not. So that was Who the Hell is the Devil? I'd like to thank Philip Harland for his excellent podcast series and letting me use a little snippet of that. There's a link in the description if you want to find out about Satan in more detail. And if you enjoyed learning about the history of evil over time, maybe you'll like to check out our video about insanity and how that's changed. So yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.